We are super excited about this episode. We're interviewing Tim Ferriss. And even more exciting, this is brought to you by Audible.com.
You know, Marion, I heard Tim Ferriss hangs out somewhere on one of these rocks. We can film. Holy it's Tim Ferriss. I knew we'd get him.
Gave me quite a fright there.
SpartanUpPodcast.com. We are back here in the Pittsfield barn. We've probably been here for 4 hours, and you'd think we get a lot done in 4 hours. Yeah. And
it's raining.
If you want to find out how much you get done in 4 hours, the guy you want to talk to is Tim Ferriss.
Indeed.
He's written the 4 Hour Work Week, the 4 Hour Body, the 4 Hour Chef.
Gets a lot done in 4 hours.
It's a lot done in 4 hours. Joe doesn't talk to him for 4 hours, but in the half hour you talk to him, you find out some pretty amazing tips and tricks.
Yeah, one of the things he taught me was never forget the people you're sitting to on the right or left. And so we got Colonel Nye.
Precisely. Thank you for that.
We've got Separate. Yeah. We've got Johnny. Yeah. And we've got Joe and Marion on the camera. So that's one of the things you'll learn from Tim.
Absolutely. But you know what? He really is an incredible guy. Like some of the most profound process that he's going through. And I'd say on our behalf. Like he's really a human guinea pig. So let's go see what Tim Ferriss is up to.
Let's do it.
We are here in San Francisco, Noe Valley, right, for Spartan Up podcast with Tim Ferriss. For those of you that don't know who Tim Ferriss is, he is the 4 hour guy. 4 hour body, right? 4 hour work week, 4 hour everything. What don't you do in 4 hours?
For better or for worse, 4 hours. Don't sleep for 4 hours. I like more than 4 hours of sleep.
Was that a marketing thing? How'd you come up with 4 hours?
The 4 hours was a product of testing. So my whole life is a product of testing, but there was some contention around the title of the book. Initially, it was Drug Dealing for Fun and Profit, which Walmart didn't like, so therefore the publisher didn't like it. Yeah. And I took the top 6 to 12 titles and subtitles and actually just threw them into Google AdWords. So I created ads where the headline was the prospective title, the text, the body text was the prospective subtitle, and then I just looked at the click-through rates. And the one that had the highest click-through rate was the 4 hour work week.
Nice.
Funny enough, it was initially the one I wanted to test was the 2 hour work week, and a few people at the publisher said, that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to believe the 2 hour work week. And I was like, 4? And they're like, okay, yeah.
What was the skit, right? 5 minute abs, 1 minute.
Oh, yeah, right? 6 minute abs. Well, you'll be in trouble if someone comes out with 7 minute abs.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you did the work to determine that 4 hours.
Tested
well.
I think that's the theme throughout everything that I do is sort of 2 to 3 week experiments and always testing your assumptions. So you think something's going to work. The publisher says this is going to work because we have 120 years of combined experience. Like, great, let's test it.
Right.
And if you can't test it, if you can't measure it, I think it's very, very difficult to make outsized progress. I think that just measuring gets you so far.
Yeah, a lot of people don't do it. And it is kind of like Pareto's principle a little bit with like
definitely
80-20.
That's a big component for sure, is looking at if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel scattered, it's like, all right, well, instead of making, and other people have said this, would say a millimeter of progress in a million directions, how do you sit down, you can do this with a pad of paper and determine what are the 20% of, say, products and services that are creating 80% of the revenue, or the 20% of customers who are producing 80% plus of the revenue. And you can do it the other way around too. Like, so what are the 20% of accounts or people in my life who are creating 80% of the negative emotions that I want to eradicate?
And eliminate them.
Yeah, and then you put together your not to do list. So you can use it both ways.
You a big list guy? You pull out like a yellow pad?
I am a big list guy, and the problematic adjective there is big. So I like to just get a small piece of paper about that big or a small index card folded over so that I have a finite amount of space. And so I really try to narrow it down to 1 or 2 key things per day that I'm going to focus on. And usually my day is split. There's a great essay by Paul Graham, who founded Y Combinator. One of the founders of Y Combinator, which is a really innovative, I guess you could call it, venture incubator here in Silicon Valley. And he wrote an essay called The Makers versus the Manager's Schedule, and how if you're a maker, you have to block out 3 to 4 hour, say, periods of time that are uninterrupted. And I try to make the first half of my day the creative maker portion up until lunch, and then after that I can do kind of the half-hour calls, the hour-long meetings, and so on for management. And I find breaking it up that way is very helpful.
That's why I can only get you in the afternoon.
That's right.
In the morning you're being creative. Do you
and grumpy.
Do you the night before? Do you plan out that next day, or when you wake up?
I try to do it the day before, and I have a journaling practice. So I have a journal. You can actually just buy this on Amazon or anywhere else, called the 5-minute journal. So I do a few minutes in the morning, and then a few minutes at night, just before bed, to review the day. So I spec out, say, the 2 or 3 key objectives, the 2 or 3 key attributes that I want to exemplify for that day. Whether it's, one that I write down a lot is unrushed, just feeling unrushed. And you can still be quick, but there's a difference between being quick and feeling rushed. And then doing sort of a post-game analysis each night. It only takes a couple of minutes. So I do that pretty much every day. I'd say that's definitely one of my rituals.
So with me, I don't know if you find this, but whether I write the notes down or not, there are things that I need to tackle, but I subconsciously just don't want to deal with it.
Of course.
That happens to you?
To everybody. Yeah, well, I shouldn't say that. It happens to me all the time.
Right.
And this morning was a good example, actually. There's just like this one gnarly project, and it involves a lot of paperwork and legal stuff, and I was just like, ah. And what I find is I give myself just a little like Scooby snack first thing. So I have 1 or 2 things typically in the morning before I get into that most gnarly task that are fun. They're fun items. So for instance, I'm trying to learn a new type of drum, and so I just took 2 minutes to set up a lesson for that drumming session. And I was like, okay, Scooby snack, now I need to go into the salt mines to deal with this project. And I think when in doubt, if you don't know what's important, the thing that you least want to do is probably the one.
Yeah, no, and so that's something I guess I need to do. And so you mix on your little tiny list.
Yep.
Big list, but written in a little, right? You've got some Scooby snacks in there with the salt mine.
First thing, yeah. First thing in the morning, just a handful of really fast, say, scheduling. I have a trip that I want to take to South America that's going to be pretty extended, and I'm excited to block that out on the calendar. So I did a little bit of orchestrating for that. And then I will either also, my general morning routine, wake up, let's just say ideally that's somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30. I'm terrible at waking up early, but for me that's early. And then I will meditate first thing for 15 to 20 minutes, usually just repeating a sound or a word. And then brew tea, sit down, turn on music, which is usually a Pandora station. Like I'm listening to a lot of Brazilian, just kind of chill samba or bossa nova stuff right now, which puts me in a pretty good mood. Do the 5-minute journal, then exercise if I have the time blocked out that morning, which is usually just a series of sort of mobility exercises, like overhead squat type movements. Yeah. Then get into the creative stuff, like I mentioned, up until lunch, which is usually going to be some type of writing, podcast related, whatever that might be, some type of creative synthesis, and then on I go. But the Scooby snacks are laid out right up front.
How are you eating? How healthy are you eating?
I'm doing really well right now, because I had a very, very difficult year last year. I was taken out of commission for 6 to 9 months with Lyme disease.
You told me, yeah.
And I was very dismissive of Lyme disease up to this point in my life. I thought it was mostly, and I think there's a lot of psychosomatic self-diagnosis of Lyme. Everyone in my family had Lyme. I grew up on Long Island. Everybody gets it and kind of takes a bunch of antibiotics and shakes it off. Some people don't feel they ever get rid of it, but I was really just destroyed, and my joints suffered a lot as a result. So this year, the number one priority was health. That's another reason why I don't usually schedule things till after lunch, because it's like, all right, I need to get some type of training or mobility work in every day. So eating right now for me is along the lines of slow carb or paleo, very, very close to 1 or 2 of those.
Very little processed.
Oh, no processed, except for my one cheat day. Then I go berserk. I went to, I had a wedding last week, and I remember my wrestling coach when I was 15 and kind of headed towards nationals, and I was cutting a ton of weight. And one of the wrestlers had a birthday party, and I went, and I was like, no cake for me. And my coach said, Tim, it's really bad luck if you don't have birthday cake on someone's birthday. And I've carried that with me ever since. Like, if I go to a wedding, I'm like, I don't want bad luck, so I have to eat the cake. Convenient excuse to eat, 17 pieces of cake, but...
So I didn't know you were a wrestler. I knew judo was your sport, right?
I did judo after wrestling. So I did wrestling. My mom, I was hyperactive, so my mom threw me into kiddie wrestling to exhaust me each day. It worked really well. And I was also really small. I was a runt up until about 6th grade, so I couldn't really play with the other kids. I'd get my ass kicked. And wrestling was a fantastic outlet. And then from 15 to 16, went to Japan as an exchange student and translated that to judo, which was just amazing.
And it translated well.
Oh, super well.
Yeah.
Although you tend to be a little... the wrestling, I think, is, at least at the high school level, tends to cultivate this incredible tension. And with judo, they'd be like, okay, we're going to do randori, which is this like free sparring for the next hour. And you cannot be tense or you're just toast. I remember I couldn't even close my hands after the first time I tried to spar for an hour because I was death gripping the uniform, which is not. You learn really quickly not to do that.
All right, well, let's take a break, and then we'll tackle a bear or eat a steak, or I don't know, we'll do something, and do some burpees.
Spear a coyote.
Spear a coyote. We'll come back and find out some tips on being successful beyond taking notes.
Sure, sounds good.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
We are proud to announce we have a new sponsor, actually our only sponsor, Audible.com, and they're offering our listeners a special deal at audible.com/SpartanUp. They have 180,000 audiobooks and spoken word audio products, including my book, Spartan Up. Don't forget, you can get a free audiobook and 30-day trial today by signing up at www.audible.com/SpartanUp. I checked in with Tim Nye, Colonel Nye, I checked in with Sephra, I checked in with Johnny, and they all allowed this sponsor. Now get back to your burpees.
So obviously it's being organized, like you said, being methodical in your routine in the morning, eating well, but lots of people do that and aren't successful. So give us some tips.
Quick tips. Number one, protect the asset. You have to have an exercise practice. I think that if you were to choose just either, say, double-handed kettlebell swing, sumo deadlift, or overhead squat, and just if you practice one of those a few times a week, you're pretty well covered. But really focusing on mobility. The second thing is you're the average of the person or the people you associate with most. And a good trick that I figured out a while back, someone told me about, was volunteer for organizations. So what I did to build a network here in Silicon Valley was volunteered for business organizations that brought in incredible speakers. So whether it was the Indus Entrepreneur or Silicon Valley blah, blah, blah association, volunteer, do an incredible job, never be late, always be early, kind of Marine style, and ask for additional responsibility, because volunteers usually think they don't have to perform well because they're not getting paid. So be the opposite of that. And I got to the point within a few months where I knew no one, I was just fresh out of college, and then I got to produce an event. And so I got to reach out to all the speakers I wanted to develop personal relationships with. And it was a really straightforward shortcut to developing a really great network. Other tips would be...
That's a big one, though. Let me just interrupt that one, because my whole life I've been building businesses and trying to recruit, in some ways, volunteers. Yeah. Because in the early days when you're building a business, you have no money to pay people. And I try to say to them, just stick it out. Like, take one extra step, work a little harder. And that's really what you're saying. Yeah,
just go. And it doesn't even have to be an extra mile, really. It's like, show up 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
And
just stand out.
And just stand out. Yeah, and do a little bit extra. And don't...
That was a smart move.
Yeah, and don't only fix the problems that you're assigned. So if I saw a problem that was easy for me to fix, I'd say, oh, well, I know you told me just to, let's say, hand out the tickets and clean up empty glasses, but I also noticed this, so I asked them to bring in extra iced tea, and they're like, oh, it's just a tiny little thing, but it's extra.
Sure.
Closely related to that, I would say that people ask me, let's say if you're looking for a job or you're looking to learn skill set that will translate to entrepreneurship, people ask me, like, what's the next hot industry? And what I always say is, don't worry about that. Find any company that's, say, 10 to 30 people and growing really quickly. Doesn't matter what the industry is, but if you can get a job working directly for the deal makers, whoever those people are, the CEO, COO, director of business development, whatever, if you can observe master deal makers in a fast-growing company, take that job.
Do you see? You should listen to that. She's like, I just carry around a camera, I'm running around the world. You're with the deal maker.
Exactly.
Right?
What you learn very quickly when you observe deal makers, very good deal makers, is that, or people who simply do it often, is that you're not looking for the answers to life. You're looking for the best questions. And if you have the wrong questions, it doesn't matter what answer you get. So what I mean by that is when you observe a really good deal maker and you observe how they phrase questions, how they overcome objections, how they find compromises or win-win situations that are a lateral step you never would have thought of in a million years. They do it by asking better questions, and you'll notice questions that show up again and again and again. And you can take those and borrow those and put them in your toolkit, and they'll serve you for life.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know it's impossible, but if there were a way for us to make it work, what would it be? I mean, just those types of really simple questions.
I learned that at a young age. I was selling swimming pools.
Yeah.
And I remember reading through a sales book, and it said, it's okay when someone says no, but you need to find out why there's a no. Is it if I change the color?
Right.
Right? And that's a really valuable tool.
Oh, definitely. It's like, I know it's a no.
Right.
I'm not going to pester you, but like, just out of curiosity, if this, what would you say?
Because then you've boxed them in,
you can use
right?
it all the time. It's like, I was at a wedding just a couple of days ago in Austin, and everything was booked for like massages and PT and stuff. And I've been working on my shoulder, so it's kind of jacked up. And they're like, sorry, we're all totally booked. And I was like, I know you're totally booked, but if there's anything you could do, I'm the best client you could ever imagine. Happy to promote you guys. Like, just take another look. Maybe there's been a cancellation. She's like, all right. And she's like, wow, all right. Christmas comes early. And you never know until you ask. And there's a fine line between being sort of creatively persistent and a huge pain in the ass, and you have to find that sweet spot by experimenting. But observing master deal makers, whether or not you want to be in sales or not, like, you are going to have to persuade people for the rest of your life.
Yeah, everybody got to sell. Biggest challenges in building a business. I mean, I know what I face.
Biggest challenges. I think there are different challenges at different phases, but as far as I can tell, most of them come down to maintaining focus. And what I mean by that is it's easy to discard, say, 10 terrible ideas and go after the one good idea. But when you start to get a little bit of momentum, you can drown yourself in good opportunities that aren't great opportunities. And if you scatter your focus, you try to do 17 different product lines, you can kill your business really easily, particularly when you have a small team. So I think asking yourself repeatedly, what is the one project, the one initiative, the one campaign that, if successful, will render the rest of these things either unnecessary or much, much easier? What is that one step? And I've called it this lead domino before, but what is the one thing on this list of 7 different campaigns that will make all the other ones irrelevant or much easier?
That's a tough answer, isn't it? Because they all sound good.
Yeah, I think they can. And I think that what it comes down to oftentimes is it returns back to measurement. So how are we defining success? Like, if we want to grow the company, let's just say, what does that mean? In 3 months, 6 months, what are we measuring? Why are we measuring those things? And, what is a sort of a comfort goal? Meaning, like, okay, we think we can easily hit this number. What is a stretch, and what is like, hallelujah, we threaded the needle. And then come up with a really concrete number to tackle. And once you have that number, then you can look at those 5 and say, all right, which of those are going to serve us right now? And I'm dealing with that increasingly so, because I have all these different branches of content and activities and angel investing and so on. It's very easy for me to get scattered. It's never been easier. So I have to continually ask that type of question.
What's your main focus now? If you had to boil it down to one?
My main focus right now is building my podcast, Tim Ferriss Show, up to a point where it's consistently in the top 10 to 15 on iTunes, so that I can establish a presence and name recognition in Hollywood and entertainment, which I can leverage then for the TV show and film projects that I'll be expanding into in the next 3 to 9 months. And specifically what that means is targeted advertising for the podcast, specifically towards people who are producers, agents, actors, directors in Hollywood and New York City. All of that can be quantified.
Not unlike really what you did in the volunteering space early on, right?
Very similar.
Right. You want to get yourself around people that are going to help you redefine your next push, basically.
Definitely. And you have to show people that you're competent first.
Right.
It's not enough. I find it's really a hard sell if you're cold emailing people who have never heard of you. And sometimes it can work, but it's hard. So I want to carpet bomb my target audience with credibility, and
then they'll take the phone call. You'll have a seat at the table. So when's enough? You're done. You don't need to work anymore.
No, I don't. This stuff isn't financial for me. I mean, if I wanted to do financial stuff, I'd be doing straight angel investing 100%, and I would be doing monetizing my audience in a number of different ways. But I have enough. I mean, money's nice. More is always better than less, I suppose, everything being equal. But I don't think everything is equal. Once the finance becomes the sole goal past a certain point in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think that there are costs, there are sacrifices. oftentimes. So for me, enough creatively, I don't think I'll ever have enough. But financially, I still drive the same broken down 2004 used Volkswagen Golf that I've had since then.
That's a good sign.
So, low burn lifestyle, as opposed to infinitely ever more money, I think gives you an incredible amount of leverage, because you know that even in the worst case scenario,
You're covered.
You're covered.
Yeah, you're awesome. That was
too,
great.
man. Thanks.
Yeah, really good kick on that bear.
Yeah, thanks. Hip mobility.
Tim was awesome. What are the odds I ran into him on that mountain?
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Actually, right now the odds are 100%. I'm no mathematician, but I know that much.
A mathematician. That word will be out there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You buy into the whole 4-hour thing?
I do. It's funny. His 4-hour work week, and he'll be the first to say it's not actually 4 hours. He said it was a catchy line, and everything's become the 4 hour, the 4 hour, the 4 hour. He's just saying you can do things a lot faster than you think you can. But his whole point was, if we actually learn how to do things better and smarter and not just take the way that it's always been done, we can do things incredibly more efficiently. So he postulated that you could do all your 40-hour week in 4 hours if you did it smart. Now, of course, as an employer, you'd hope that your employees would then still work 40 hours but do 160 hours worth of work, right? Yeah. But no, I think that he really has done a great job of, use the term biohacking, where he hacks things. He says, what's a faster way to do this? One of the really simple ones that I like from the 4-hour work week, and that made a huge difference for me when I read the 4-hour work week. He said, what do we do right now when we leave a voicemail? Hey, it's Joe calling, give me a call back. Hey, Joe, it's Johnny, sorry I missed you. Don't know what you're calling about, give me a call back. You do that 4 or 5 times and you got nothing accomplished. His voicemail says, you've reached Tim Ferriss. Do not leave me a message unless you're going to tell me exactly when to call you back and exactly when. Here are the times that I call, tell me the best one. And there's no screwing about.
It's funny because I learned that just running my own business.
Yeah.
I had lots of customers. Customers are calling. Sorry, I'm choking on an owl bar.
Hey, if Dick from Twitter can get through, you can get through it too.
That's right.
Make sure you go to SpartanUpPodcast.com and watch Dick Costello's interview so you know what I'm talking about. Go.
Who had the same issue. Keep going. You keep going.
Well, I want to turn to these guys because I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan. I always have been. It was a big thrill for me actually to watch that interview and just to see you engaging and hearing him actually prove that he is as sharp as I think that he is. But Sephra, you were actually really surprised at how young he was.
Yeah, my twin brother's a huge fan, and I knew about all of his work and stuff, but it wasn't until I saw the podcast that I realized he's kind of a co-patriot. And the thing that I think it's interesting about what he does is, as a permaculturist, which is a design framework for designing ecosystems or businesses or whatever it is by mimicking natural ecosystems. And some of the principles of that are, where can I have the least change for the greatest effect? So when you're designing like a closed loop, self-sufficient, efficient system, what he's doing is say, what part in my day can I change that will make this, make my day as effective as possible? So the example from nature, right, would be like if you have huge erosion down in a river, you don't go to where the I think I said this in another podcast, where the banks are, already completely eroded away. You go way up to the top of the watershed where it's just a trickle, and you divert it away. So I think he's saying, well, how can I take away some of this waste? How can I be most effective and design it, patterns?
That's the biggest thing sorry, Colonel Nye, my throat is back, so I'm
go
back.
ahead.
The biggest thing for me in running my own business when I was a kid is how can I be most efficient? And so I think whether it's the 4-hour body or the 4-hour work week, he's talking about eliminating waste. When we started racing, we were doing these adventure races 15, 20 years ago, or Ironmans, you know where you made up the most time? It wasn't by cycling faster or running faster or climbing a mountain faster. It was actually by when you came to a checkpoint, whether you're transitioning from swim to bike or you're unpacking your pack before you head out. People dilly-dally around. They'll waste 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, hours, go to sleep. That's where you can make up all your time. And we do that hundreds of times a day, each day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Eliminate that stuff.
Yeah.
That's the waste.
And that was another thing that he talked about too, is as how he structures his day. And that's a great point, because if you wake up in the morning and you start replying to emails, you start dealing with all the fires that are there, the end of the day comes, you've changed hats 27 times and never done anything intentional. And I love that he said he creates the first half of his day as creative time, because that's where the bread and butter is. He's going to create new content. He's going to write books. He's going to give interviews. And that's all during that first part of the day.
The Scooby snacks?
Well, yeah, but the Scooby snack was cool too.
No,
he said quite often,
issue.
if he's looking at a whole bunch of work, he'll give himself one fun little project just to get the juices flowing, and that's the Scooby snack he talks about to get things moving. But the idea that he'll set the first half of his day up for the actual proactive creative work instead of the reactive work. and then the afternoon he has to do all the chores and the reactive work. It's also, I found it interesting that a guy who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, which is about how to only work 4 hours a week, clearly he's working
12 hours a day.
12 hours a day. But you look what he's accomplishing, and that's the thing is most people work 12 hours a day just to do the bare minimum to get by. He's doing 12 hours a day to set the world on fire, and I think that's pretty cool.
I'll tell you one other thing. I see you itching to go, Colonel Nye. is a lot of people that are reading the book are putting in their autoresponders in email, I'm sorry, I only respond to email Tuesdays between noon and 1. What ends up happening as the recipient of that, I don't email them anymore.
Sure, yeah.
Right? So I don't know if it's helpful or not. In some instances it is.
Well, the cool thing with Tim that I would say is he doesn't say everything is gospel. He'll say, try this. And if it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, try it, then do something else. And he basically says, don't take anything on gospel. Kind of like the Buddha said, don't listen to what I say just because I say it. Try everything yourself. So, yeah. Right. Colonel Nye, go.
I don't know what I wanted to say back, an hour ago or so. No, but you're right. I mean, he breaks up the day, and what I liked is exactly how you described it, how he breaks it up into separate parts. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of long-range planning, short-range planning, and so he hits what we would say those 50-meter targets versus the 500-meter targets, and so he kind of works his way into that. But the part that you didn't cover yet is that he does the post-game analysis, he called it, or what we would call the after-action review. And he thinks that that's very important.
Huge.
After every event is over, you go back and you do an analysis of it, and you focus on how to get better.
Yeah.
You don't really, kind of typically you would write the 3 things I did well and the 3 things I did bad, but you don't really need to know the 3 things you did well because you kind of do those anyway. Mm-hmm. So you focus on how do I get better and better and better at these things. So he's got those, and then the other part is that he journals.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's another kind of thing you see a lot of successful people doing, and he just kind of writes down. What do you say at night? The things he. Go ahead.
Well, he said, journaling's indispensable, and when you go through back all your stuff, your journals are the most sacred things. But so he journals in the morning, sets his intention, and then he revisits it, halfway through the day, and then back again at night. He does the review of it and sets up the next day. And I think, and that goes back also. What would you say before that? I was thinking about permaculture design. So you do site analysis.
I didn't bring it up.
No, but it's exactly right.
Since you brought up permaculture design.
No, you do a site analysis. You see what you're working with. Where's the wind? Where's the sun? What's going on? Then you sit on the land. Then you implement it, and then you have the design. But then you revisit it. And you say, all right, now what do we do? And that's the way any design loop should go.
Yeah.
Right?
To always check in with what's working, what's not.
Improve. I mean, like every Spartan race must be a little better, a little different,
Yeah, I would say if you want an analogy the way you like to with your permaculture stuff and Spartan race, it would be like visualize like Siberia with a windstorm, a volcano. That's a Spartan race. Right?
Perfect. That fits.
I love Siberia. Perfect.
Cool. Well, Colonel Nye, now that you brought up that we should wrap up.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, you didn't?
I don't get it.
It's okay.
I'll journal about it later.
It was a phenomenal interview with Tim Ferriss. Thanks for doing that one, Joe.
No problem.
Good for you too.
Thank you for listening to another epic story of success. For show notes, video, and audio of this episode, visit SpartanUpPodcast.com/056. Follow us on Twitter at SpartanUpPod. The Spartan Up Podcast is brought to you by Spartan.
To find a race near you, visit Spartan.com.